comprehensive immigration reform. You and I know that more accurately by a single word description: amnesty. Amnesty is wrong, and as your next United States Senator, not only will I oppose amnesty, but I will reintroduce the Enforcement First Act. You know, the trouble is this, and it really affirms the disconnection that so many of us feel with Washington, D.C. and those who have spent so much time there. But the fact is, whether it's Barack Obama or Janet Napolitano, or yes, even John McCain, there is a failure to understand what is at stake. All three of the aforementioned trio view this entire topic as a political problem to be managed, instead of seeing it for what it really is: a national security threat, an economic security threat, and an invasion that must be stopped. And again, I'm glad that so many of you are sitting down. Kahuna, you may want to grab a chair, especially since you're running for treasurer. You know, look, there's Jeff Smith, that hardworking candidate for Congress. He's back here. Good to see you, Jeff. And again, you know, if you're not going to sit down and grab a hold of something, guys, I don't want you to pass out, but it was something we talked about on the debates the past couple of nights. It's something you'll hear about in television spots starting statewide bright and early tomorrow morning, and it is simply this. Robert Rector of the Heritage Foundation sat down and started to work the numbers for retirement benefits alone. That is to say, for Medicare and Social Security benefits for illegals granted citizenship under the McCain amnesty bill, the cost to you and me and every other American taxpayer would be $2.6 trillion. That is trillion with a T. Not only is it ill-advised and wrong-headed, it is unsustainable. And we cannot have that. And that is one reason I'm running for the United States Senate. To be sure, there are other concerns. Obviously, my opponent in the fall of 2008, in the midst of that financial panic, I think many of us hoped against hope that when he said, "I'm taking time out from the campaign trail to go back to Washington," we really hoped that at long last our senior senator would engage in some candid, straight talk, would say to the powers that be, "Hang on a second, let's not succumb to panic." Would that had been so. Sadly, that was not the case. In fact, according to former Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson, the one individual who ensured the passage of that ill-advised bailout plan, that $700 billion taxpayer-funded package to the Wall Street investment banks, and oh yes, $150 billion in earmark expenditures. The one person who made it possible was John McCain. When he threw his support behind him, when he told those gathered in the cabinet room at the White House that he would talk it over with the Senate Conference of Republicans and that he would work to round up recalcitrant Republicans in the House to go along with that ill-advised bailout. Now, what is interesting about it is that when you see television ads and hear radio ads from my opponent, you hear how unalterably opposed he is to earmarks. And yet, in one vote, he pulled the trigger on $150 billion of them. Small wonder then, the day after the vote, when contacted by members of the press, my opponent said, and I quote, "It's an obscenity." Of course, that was the day following his yes vote. And then perhaps you're familiar with what happened about 3 weeks into this campaign. I must confess I no longer subscribe to the Arizona Republic. And maybe you have followed me in that wise decision. At any rate, someone showed me the headline, front and center on the paper, McCain, I was misled on TARP. Now understand, this rather astounding comment came 2 days after he and I were featured in a report on NBC Nightly News, where one of his comments was that because of his 28 years in Washington, he was better equipped to represent all of us because he understood what went on. So in Arizona parlance, this ain't John's first rodeo. But let's see now. He was for the bill before he was against it. And then somebody else is to blame. He didn't understand. Fellow citizens, I have to tell you, with all due respect, that sounds a lot more like John Kerry than the John McCain I used to know. And that's another reason why we're going to bring him back now. C is for cap and trade. Remember in the last Congress? John McCain co-wrote the cap and trade bill with Joe Lieberman. And at the introductory press conference, he stood up and said, and I quote, I don't see how you can be a conservative and oppose cap and trade. Really, John? I do, because cap and trade is a solution in search of a problem that has proven to be non-existent. We have seen the reports. Global warming is a hoax. And you don't try to offer solutions to a hoax by scamming the American people, driving up their energy rates, driving up their rates of taxation, and lowering their standard of living. I will oppose any cap and trade legislation. Finally, you and I go back a long way. You gave me the remarkable honor and opportunity to stand in the well of the United States House of Representatives and along with 400 plus other citizens raise my right hand and take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to represent you in the United States Congress. My colleagues honored me with membership on the Ways and Means Committee. Now you see those Sunday shows, and you hear the descriptions, and one of my friends asked me one time, JD, on the door, does it say Powerful Ways and Means Committee? I said, no, it just says Ways and Means Committee. And yet, it is a vitally important committee because, as we know constitutionally, all revenue bills, that is to say, all bills concerning taxation, must originate in the House. The Ways and Means Committee has jurisdiction over the tax code. It was my honor in 2001 and 2003 to literally have a hand in writing the tax cuts that reinvigorated our nation's economy at very uncertain times. And again, the contrast could not be clearer. While I was working to ensure that an average American family would have at least an extra, well, close to $1,200 in the family budget. Now, I know that doesn't sound like much in Washington, Tom, but to a lot of families in Mesa, Arizona, and the East Valley, that's real money. And that's what happened with the tax code as we ended the marriage penalty, as we increased the per-child tax credit, and at long last, as this year, we finally put the death tax to death. But it may be coming back. At any rate, I worked hard on all of that. My opponent, on both occasions, in 2001 and 2003, went to the well of the United States Senate, not only voted no on tax cuts, but derided them, calling them, quote, tax cuts for the rich. Again,